Welcome to Silicon Valley Impact, where business insight meets startup innovation. And now, please give a warm welcome to your host, Brian Sparks!
All right, can you feel the energy? I love it, Brian. You do not miss a beat. I want to welcome everybody to Silicon Valley Impact. I'm your host, Brian Sparks.
All right, that's enough. That's enough, everybody. That's enough.
Everyone needs to settle down. The purpose of this show is to have honest conversations about what it takes to build great businesses and communities so that you can make an impact within your own. I kept them going, even though I was reading
They love you so much.
Yeah.
And I love you too, Brian, and I'm so happy to see you again.
I know. It feels like, I mean, though our listeners don't miss a beat every week, you and I haven't seen each other for a while, so you picked up right where you left off.
Well, you know, I mean, it's a matter of professionalism and respect for our audience, Brian.
You're amazing.
Yeah, they're the most important people in the room.
All right, well, speak about important people in the room. We have three individuals today that we're going to be talking with. We have Dan, Ziyad, and Emad. Good to see you guys. We're going to talk a little bit about strategy with Dan, and we're going to talk about two startups coming in from Saudi. And as the nature of the beast, we'll kick it off like this. Dan, go ahead and introduce yourself. I know you a little bit, and I want our audience to know a little bit about you. So give a quick little intro about who you are and how we met, or just do the intro thing the best you can.
Yeah, let me start by talking about my history in the Bay Area. So I grew up in Oregon, came down here first to get a graduate degree at Berkeley, went to Bell Labs on the East Coast, came back to get another degree at Stanford, and stayed since then. I worked at Intel for a number of years, learned a lot about ecosystems. We can talk about, how if you want to bring a technology to market and you want to grow that technology, the importance of developing that ecosystem around you. Had some marketing and product roles, such as running the Intel Inside branding program and running product management for the mobile business when we brought wireless Wi-Fi into the mainstream. After that, I went to Adobe. I was VP of strategy there and helped lead Adobe's transition to the cloud. And what I've done since then is I joined some former colleagues of mine at Intel who are based in Israel, and we formed a venture firm that's investing in Israeli startups.
I love it. Well, you have a lot of experience, so I'm excited to dive into it and get some insight based on your experience. The go-to-market, I don't know if we talked about that one before. That was a new one in the ecosystem. Okay, we're going to geek out on that in a little bit.
Okay.
But I want to pass the mic to Ziyad. Ziyad, tell us a little bit about you, and I'm going to butcher it, but tell me right, COGNNA.
Yes.
I got it right?
Yes,
okay,
that's right.
Brian, come on, where's the applause?
I'm sorry, man. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was actually thinking about Dan's introduction. That guy has been, Dan, you've been part of the fabric of Silicon Valley here in ways that we all just completely take for granted. Right? I mean, things that you've done and been involved with are things that we just consider perfectly normal and everyday now.
Yeah. Do I see a budding bro crush right now?
A little bit. Yeah. I was stunned and considering all of the things that Dan has been involved with, which is so cool.
Yeah, he definitely has the experience, and we'll dive in. But Ziyad, go ahead, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your company.
Awesome. My name is Ziyad.
Thank you.
Thank everyone. My name is Ziyad Alshehri. I'm the co-founder and CTO of COGNNA. A little background about me. I was born and raised in Saudi Arabia. I moved to the States around 2015 after working for a couple of years in cybersecurity world. I did a lot of security operations, defense, incident response. And then I moved to the States to do my master's in Boston. And then also I worked in Boston for some time, so probably for like 7 years. I learned a lot and worked with so many different partners and developed a lot of great open source projects and contributed into building a lot of interesting workflows in Wayfair, which is the company that I left last year I worked there. And then I went back to Saudi And then I went back to Saudi to establish my startup there, and also work with local partners to solve the problem of cybersecurity and automate a lot of the manual work that we see there. So that was kind of quite the journey on that space. We've been in the market for a couple of years now, and we're gonna probably talk about the startup in a bit. But this kind of a short brief of my experience.
For sure. We can get to it. That sounds like a great journey. I love it. Want to dive into that in a little bit. Emad, talk a little bit about Autobai?
Autobia.
Autobia.
Yeah,
Okay.
Autobia.
Okay. Autobia.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about you and Autobia.
Of course. My name is Emad Daghreri. I'm from Saudi as well. My background in building digital solution and scaling them up. I used to be the CTO and managing partner of a company called TAM in Saudi. We bootstrapped that company from 2012 and went to IPO last year after 10 years of being in the business. That was my first exit in the startup ecosystem. I'm currently the co-founder and CEO of a company called Autobia, and our focus is to solve the supply chain problem of the automotive spare parts in Saudi.
Okay.
As you know, there are a lot of projects there. People are depending on vehicles more and more. There are a lot of construction work and trucks and all of that nonsense. There are difficulties in managing the supply chain, and we are trying to solve that specific problem for the businesses in Saudi by being the biggest marketplace that have the biggest supplier network locally and globally as well.
Okay. And this is not your first startup. This is actually your second startup.
Yeah, this is my second startup. Yeah, the first one was in the B2G domain. This one is the B2B domain. It's completely different in terms of the market. But I didn't mention that I love 4x4 and doing a lot of offer landing and camping. And that specific hobby drive me through the supply chain and spare part industry, since I'm doing everything myself at home. And I decided to enter that market and solve that specific problem for all of us.
Now, there's something unique about you two, because you come out of what's called the CODE program, which is a Saudi cohort, and kind of finish that for me because I want to make sure I don't butcher anything. What is that, a government-sponsored program that you've partnered with the Multiverse, and now you're kind of here immersing yourself in the Silicon Valley experience? Is that correct?
Exactly. So it's basically a program designed for high growth startups who are focusing on the tech space, trying to grow beyond the current scale and try to kind of go beyond the market that we're operating in. So it's designed to focus on blitz scaling and product market fit, maturing the products and to like a different scale. It's a mix between Stanford designed and specific program on teaching of those principles, and also a lot of community-driven programs to meet with a lot of investors in the region, and also to talk to potential customers and VCs on like how to shape the companies to be able to reach the global scope as well.
Yeah, and we'll come back to that and to see what has been the benefit of being actually in Silicon Valley to scale your business internationally. But lots to talk about with you two, and so we'll come back. But Dan, I want to get into it with you because I've been excited about this conversation. If anyone who is listening today has been interested from a corporate perspective, early Silicon Valley, because you've been in the game for a while, this is going to be the show to listen to, because Dan has a ton of insight on how these big companies work. And when you think of Silicon Valley, these are like the Intels, the Adobes, all the Fangs. Well, it's not Fang anymore. It's Mang, Meta, and they messed it up. But Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, you know what goes on at these high level in order to move the needle forward. Where do we begin with this in terms of your experience? What is top of mind for our listeners who are startup and looking to develop strategy? Especially is there a big difference between strategy on a big scale and strategy on a small scale when it comes to the startup?
I think strategy is strategy, but the amount of resources you have are obviously going to be a lot different in a startup than a big company. Although I'll tell you, I've never met anybody, whether a really small or really big company, who thinks they have enough resources. So everyone always thinks they need more. But I think you have to really think about, obviously, about your customer, your value proposition, how you're going to get to market, and importantly, what partners do you need? Whether it's selling partners, whether it's other types of products or complementary pieces that you need to make that technology successful. Because if you win and you get a big part of the market share, how do you make that market size grow? And that's where you're really going to need a lot of help from the rest of the ecosystem.
I love it. So that's just a little teaser. Let's go back to the beginning of what got you started, because we'll end up there. We'll say that. You got into, so you came out of school, I mean, multiple degrees, stayed here, got connected. Your first role was with Intel. That's where you landed. Talk a little bit about that journey and how you broke into, Intel, and then your journey on up, because you sat in on some very high profile meetings that taught you a lot that we can kind of extract some nuggets from. But start at the beginning. How did you land in these early stage roles, and what did you love about it?
So I knew I wanted to work in tech. I joined Intel at a time, it was pretty early in the PC revolution, and Intel was very well positioned for that. And I think what made it successful, you kind of think they're making silicon, but Intel always thought at a very broad perspective. Okay, we're going to make the best silicon, but how do we grow the market? How do we work with the OEMs, the computer manufacturers, with the channels? So I got really intrigued with, we were doing end user marketing for a chip, for a microprocessor, and that's what the Intel Inside program was about. Kind of twofold. One was ingredient branding. So if you're selling Pop-Tarts, and this one has Smuckers inside of it, that was sort of a example of ingredient branding. And so how do we make people care about the microprocessor? Because what we were doing was, constantly innovating, coming out with faster products, better products. But how do we get the whole industry to move along with us? Like, Pentium processor came out. How do we get IBM to want to put that into their PC? How do we get HP to want to put that into their PC? So we had to drive end user demand for the latest technology and tell them why they needed it. And in doing so, we also brought them along to new forms of media. So they were just advertising in newspapers. We said, hey, we think you should be advertising on TV. We think you should be advertising on the internet. So we had a cooperative marketing fund through the Intel Inside program. We'd say, okay, a portion of this is just for TV. So if you want to get access to our co-marketing funds, you need to start going on TV. Sometimes people were sort of kicking and screaming, but it turned out to be a really good thing for growing the industry. Rising tide lifts all boats.
So let me kind of catch up a little bit, because I'm probably the slow kid in the class here. There's all this innovation going on, and you caught that, Brian? I have to ask these questions.
I want you to take that back, Brian. You are not the slow kid in the class, okay? I think we need to be nice. You can't be bullying yourself.
Thanks, buddy. All right, championing me. So there's this innovation going on, and the strategy was not only to educate the end user, but you had to educate the industry, the partnerships. That sounds like a tall task. And you're talking about all these different channels in which to do that. What was kind of the strategy around the messaging, other than the motions and the channels? But how was kind of the progression of educating partners and end users to kind of come together with Intel leading the charge? Because that's a tall order. What were some of the early strategies and conversations around that?
Well, first of all, the branding strategy for Intel we're about two things: safety and technology. So, you can feel it's going to be compatible with all your software. It's a good product, and we have the leading technology, and what we internally called safe sex with safety and technology. And so we wanted to proliferate that message, and we did some advertising directly to end users. We did some advertising in conjunction with the OEMs, with the computer manufacturers. And our story was about let's drive the industry forward. And ultimately it's about what can you do with that. So you think about what we called the software spiral, which was we give you a faster computer, it can run more sophisticated software that then drives demand for the next set of technologies that are even faster, better software. So we were also delivering a value to the end user, to the software community, that they could give, if it's consumers, a more immersive experience, if it's business users, more productivity, get more work done faster.
Yeah, so I'm really hearing you had to look at the audience from multiple perspectives and tailor messaging accordingly. And not to go, this is really my space here. I love it. I can geek out on this all day, but not to go too far down this rabbit hole. You're now educating the market on innovation. You're bringing in unique partnerships. You're moving forward. Does strategy, and again, if we can think of this from the perspective of also a startup, it's just a matter of scale, I would think. As things started to progress, did you stay on one message, or was it kind of always evolving?
It was evolving. So if I move on to Centrino, that was the product that brought wireless laptops into the mainstream. So if you go back 20-something years ago, so I know going pretty far back, but laptops were not that popular. People were running desktops. And, the processor that went into the desktop, it was about performance. But what was happening is we kept cranking up the performance through megahertz, higher frequency, which meant more power. And more power is not good for laptops. They get too hot. They take more battery. They drain your battery life. So we had to go a very different direction of let's come out with something that, yes, it's still good performance, but it can enable thinner form factors. It can enable longer battery life, and it can enable Wi-Fi, wireless, so you can use it anywhere. And that's where, a good example of where we really got into the ecosystem. So we said, great, we put Wi-Fi into our laptops, and we bundled all these things together into one brand. So that was new for us. To get the Centrino brand, you needed our processor, our chipset, our wireless. All together, you could brand it as Centrino. What did that mean? If there are no hotspots around, can't do a lot with it outside my home or office, right? Or if those hotspots aren't working, can't do much. And so we actually went out and enabled the industry. We went to Starbucks. We went to all of these places, say, okay, we're going to do basically a certification program. We called it a verification program, and make sure, can I connect? Can I get, can I load a web page? Can I load, can I tunnel into my corporate network if I have a VPN? And we put a little sticker on the store. And we realized, so we were about to launch this, and we realized, boy, we better have all of these Wi-Fi hotspots, and they'd better work. So one of my partners that I work with now, he was responsible for the business development to get that done. And he did 150 signed business agreements in 3 months coming up on the launch to make sure that people would, that we could enable this brand promise of wireless laptops.
So this is, just again, I want to break it down because we talk a lot about building community around here. And usually we talk about it from the perspective of just the importance of establishing relationships, which is. But what I'm hearing the strategy was deployment on, to kind of go back and to recap, is educating the market, connecting partners to the market, but then branding almost the environment that where the users would be. And now you're creating this ecosystem, as you said earlier, where there is real tangible markings of a community driven by Intel. I think that's phenomenal because, again, Brian, go ahead because there's something.
Well, we all knew this was happening to some degree, but at the same time, I got to say, there was nothing that we felt pressured to do or that we were feeling. I mean, you guys did an amazing job. because here in Silicon Valley, that was all happening. We those of us that were tech related or interested in tech, we knew that there was more access and that our laptops were becoming more useful and more mobile. It's almost like the Nike story, where they took something that was already pretty ubiquitous and turned it into something cool, right? And so I feel like the sort of subtle yet extremely effective implementation and marketing of this was genius.
But it also goes a step further. What I'm hearing, and we're geeking out on this now, I love this, is you're providing value all along the way. You're not trying to you're not feeling salesy. You're not saying this is part of what we're doing to move our company. No, this is what we're trying to do to move a community. And that was the strategic genius that I feel was kind of moving these campaigns, was you were marking the territory, allowing people to access new technology, educating, again, around and around. Now from there, where was kind of the next steps in this journey?
In my journey, or in
yes, well, it sounds like you're like in lockstep with this. So what's next in your journey?
So I guess a couple of years after that, I made a move to Adobe, and so I felt like I felt like the software side was going to be really important. And I joined at a time, one of the senior executives told me, it's like, yeah, don't push anything too radical for about 2 years.
And your role there at that time
I was head of strategy there.
Head of strategy,
yeah.
Okay. So don't push it, don't bear down, Brian.
What year was this?
2007.
Okay,
2007.
thank you.
Okay, so you arrived, VP of strategy, Adobe. They're telling you, hey, you've done great. Don't go crazy. What are you thinking?
So I think, really just learning the company, learning that side of the industry. We headed in, as you'll remember, really bad recession, and that turned out to be, the saying, "Don't let crisis go to waste." So I think it opened up the management team to bigger thinking, because we were hit really hard in the recession. Our revenues were down 20%. Our earnings were down 80%. Our stock price was down, I think, 75%. And so I started looking at where have we been as a company and where could we go? And where we had been is we had been really successful with creating suites of our products, all the creative products, Photoshop, InDesign, et cetera, kind of bundled together into one price and worked together well. And the good thing was customers loved it. And the model we had was what's called a perpetual license model. So you buy it, you could use that set of products forever, but we're coming out with upgrades about every 2 years. And some of our customers would upgrade every time we came out with something new. Most of them would not. Most of them would be sort of pragmatic and say, okay, let's wait it out, maybe 2 upgrades from now or 3 upgrades from now. It'll be worth it for me to pay that extra money and get the latest stuff. And what happens is you get to, Photoshop version 14, because this has been in the market a long time. And so you've put a lot of the good features in it, but, people are pretty happy with what they had. And some of our customer surveys said customer satisfaction was really high, which is great for a company, right? But some people said, yeah, I'm so satisfied, I don't know if I'll ever need to upgrade again. So that's bad for the company, obviously. So, that was one thing. Our growth was not what we wanted it to be. We were a big company. We were about $3 billion in revenue. One of the leading software companies in operating margin. But there's something different about the culture of being sort of, are you a growth company? Or are you sort of somebody, we're growing, but not at this tremendous rate. And so I looked at what was happening in the industry. It was all cloud and SaaS, right? And if you were getting a new company funded, you weren't going to go in and say, hey, I've got some great desktop software product. Like, nobody's going to fund that company. And the SaaS companies had done really well through the recession compared to us. So started looking at, well, if we were to start Adobe today, would we start it as a desktop software company or would we start it as a cloud company? And people would say, oh, well, a cloud company, of course. It's like, but, we've been really successful with what we've been doing. It's like, yeah, but if this is the way we would want the company if we were starting it today, then shouldn't we move to that? Let's figure out how to move that way. So that was a very long process and was a really important decision.
Who did you have who did you have to convince to do that though? Like what were some of the power moments in order to shift that from the old to the new?
So definitely the CEO and CFO. So if you think about, hey, I've got this great idea, it's going to mean, because we're going now to, like, in the old model, you pay me a lot of money up front for the software. In the subscription model, you pay me a little bit of money up front, and you keep paying it over time. But the money I get from you initially, it's a lot smaller. Right?
Let me ask you this, Dan. I know you probably already said it, but I missed it. But you're saying this was a great idea, and I agree. And in hindsight, we can say this was a great idea. But did you have to identify some problems that were in play if you didn't make this shift? And what were some of those identifiers? Because again, the reason why I ask this is whether you're launching a company and you're in the early stage, or you're a well-established enterprise company like Adobe, and you have to pivot, what goes into negotiating or pitching an idea? And if you ask me, it's got to start with the pain point. And anyone who just leads with a good idea doesn't necessarily hit the market. Was focusing on problems within a big strategy in these conversations, or was just, no, we've got to keep up, and this is the good idea?
I think if you look back historically and you say there was Blockbuster Video and there was Netflix, and they had so many years to respond, and they didn't, and now they're not around. I think there's one store still in Bend, Oregon. If you're Barnes & Noble and Amazon comes along, if you're Kodak, there are all these examples of people who saw this new technology coming and this new business model coming, but didn't know how to respond. We were in a fortunate position that nobody was eating our lunch yet. We didn't have a competitor that was starting to take away market share from us like Netflix was doing to Blockbuster, but it was just a matter of time. So
I relate this to immediately with those examples, I go, you're right, Dan, good point. You didn't have that luxury maybe back then as clear. Oh yeah, you did. But the choices, and what I mean by that is right now we're dealing with AI, and you see it coming.
Yeah.
You've got to deploy it on some level, but you have so many choices and there's so much uncertainty. How do you, again, if you can kind of incorporate that into the the insight, how do you say to yourself, okay, no, this is the one decision we need to go with, even though we see the technology coming that we need to shift with? How do you convince the stakeholders into kind of, taking a risk?
So, I went back, and when I was at Intel, we spent a long time thinking about Clayton Christensen talking about the innovator's dilemma and why do companies not respond quickly enough to these new technologies that are coming up. And usually it's only applicable to these low-end kind of solutions. It's not as good, et cetera. But then it sort of steps up and until it eats your lunch. And so I've always had that in the back of my mind, coming from Intel, going to Adobe. And, with AI as an example, AI is going to improve over time. You can't look at, well, here's what it does today, and humans can do all these things better. You have to think about where it's going to go. And I think it's hard for big companies to make the change compared to, startups. You've kind of got a clean slate. Big company, you've got all this stuff made us successful, and we're good at. And so if I give the Adobe example, every job in the company had to change when we moved to this new model. The way you did marketing was different. The way you did finance, the way you developed products, the the IT infrastructure, everything had to change. And you can't do that on a dime. So if you see something new coming, you got to look at the trajectory of where it's going, not where it is today, and start thinking like, how do I start turning this big ship around? Because I can't move that. That big ship is not as nimble as these startups are going to be.
And you're on the front lines every day, just for a matter of scope and effort. These conversations started at point A and ended at point B when things were now going in different directions. How long did those conversations go on for? And then what was the check-in time? Like, were you with them every day saying, look, we got to do it? Or was it, no, we'll talk about this once a quarter and then we'll eventually make this. What was that like?
It was, so imagine, it's easy with 2020 to say, well, wasn't that the obvious thing for Adobe to do? But nobody had done what we did. Now everybody saw what Adobe did, and Microsoft, and everybody else did it. So it was a really big decision for us. I'm going to them saying, okay, our revenue is going to fall 10%, our margin's going to be cut by half. Our earnings per share are going to fall and won't recover fully for 4 years. That's what happened.
Wow.
So you're going, hey, I've got this great idea. It's going to tank all of our financials. That's a big decision. Mm-hmm. And so it was a couple of years for us, really going through kind of doing the financial modeling, thinking about what it meant from a product roadmap standpoint, what it meant from a go-to-market standpoint, how do we compensate our sales force differently. And it was going to be a transition, but we did it really quickly. And one of the things I showed the management team is other companies had started down this path. So we saw like Autodesk, Intuit. They had already moved a fair amount of their revenue to recurring revenue.
Yeah. I don't have any idea what that is. Let's
take
why
our
don't we,
break.
it's a good time to go to a break.
Yeah,
Let's
take our
just
break.
go to a break. We'll be right back.
All right, we're back from our little break, and okay, we're always putting out fires around here, Brian. I mean, last time we had
a jackhammer last time, and just a regular hammer this time, and usually it's so quiet here.
Yeah, the adventures of Brian and Brian.
But you always say you love chaos, Brian. So maybe people are tuning into that.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to actually live it. I just want to say it. All right, so Dan, where we left off is we were talking about that negotiation process, that convincing of the lead team to make this pivot. Go back into that, and if we wrap it up, because we want to talk about your fund a little bit.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit more, like around the lengths of those conversations and how you eventually close the deal.
I mean, one of the things you need to think about is not just, I talked about business model, and it turned out to be really good for Adobe, but it needs to be good for your customers too. Mm-hmm. So what was good for the customers is, I said earlier, we used to release new software every 2 years. That's kind of slow in today's world. And so with this subscription model and this cloud model, you could push out new features, new technology a lot more rapidly. So for people that wanted to be on the leading edge, that was good. We weren't constrained anymore by it needs to be desktop software. We could say, well, does this feature make more sense as a mobile app or a cloud capability, or it might be running on the desktop? And we sort of think about, the subscription was an all-you-can-eat model. So anything that we put out there in the creative space, no matter what the modality was and what you used it for, was all part of that subscription.
Yeah.
So it really made us more nimble and quicker to think about, hey, we have this new business model, but we're also giving more value to our customers. And importantly, and we thought this was really important, was ongoing value. So you could, to give an analogy, I can buy a car or I can lease a car, but it's the same car I'm getting, right? And we didn't think that was appropriate. It has to be like this it's different. Mm-hmm. You're paying us differently, but you're getting ongoing value every month, because every month you could choose to cancel your subscription. So we better give you something new every month.
Yeah. So you got buy-in from your stakeholders. We know how it played out. You stayed with Adobe for a little while longer, and then you pivoted yourself. You took your strategies to this new fund that you're working on now. I mean, there's a lot going on here, and there's a crossover with what you guys are doing. Let's pivot towards that. Talk a little bit about what you're doing now and how you've taken your strategy of your past into what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I had sort of finished with working in the corporate world. I wanted to do something new, and my motto was I want to spend my days doing things that I enjoy with people that I like. And in the corporate world, you might not always have that combination. You gotta right. So some people that I had worked with at Intel that were based in Israel had started up doing the venture investing. And there's a very vibrant startup community in Israel. And they wanted somebody in the US. And so they asked me, would you like to be involved? And I said, sure. And that's been a few years now.
And so talk about really what you're doing to bring your Silicon Valley experience to those companies and what your day-to-day is. And what are you seeing from a global perspective? We're going to hear from you guys on that as well. But what are you seeing from a global perspective from startups that are successful?
So first of all, we invest in early stage, deep technology companies. So they need to have some IP, patents, so we want somebody who's solving really big problems for the world and is doing it in a technological way where it can make a real difference and it's protectable. So it's got, big market opportunity and something that's got legs and sticking around in that market. What we do that's, maybe a little bit unique, one is we all have deep operating backgrounds in different areas, in engineering and marketing and finance. We've all had those operating roles. We've brought technologies to market. We've had them be successful. So we kind of bring that in, and a lot of the startups like that. I want an investor who has that kind of experience. Mm-hmm. The second thing is all of us except one of us had worked at some point at Intel. Intel is by far the largest private employer in Israel. There are, among current and former employees, there are 30,000 Intel folks out of a country of 9 million. So there's nothing like that even in California with one company having that kind of big presence. And that gives us a really good network for finding companies, for helping them, doing the due diligence, helping them be successful.
Mm-hmm. And are you bringing your experience with strategy to these startups that you're working with? And from a startup perspective, is what you've learned in corporate useful for them as they go to market themselves?
Yeah, so I think as a startup, you've got to be quick. As I said, you don't have the same resources, but it's also good to be taking a step back, thinking about your situation analytically and strategically. So I feel I can bring that, and my partners can bring that to the companies and really think about, okay, here's your, all of them have a multi-year plan, probably multi-year financials, but okay, what are the roadblocks that you might hit in getting there, and how are you going to mitigate those, and how are you going to, what needs to happen for you to be so successful?
Yeah, I love it. All right, well, let's play with that a little bit and bring in Ziyad and Emad. Ziyad, tell us a little bit about, you're just sitting here going, man, I love this stuff. In the break, you and I were talking, and you were a big fan of Adobe and what they're doing. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing with COGNNA and kind of like what have been some of your pain points as a startup? Because this is your first company, whereas Emad, this is your second company. But talk a little bit about what you're doing and working on now.
Awesome. So we started with COGNNA to solve a pain in the cybersecurity world. Today, cybersecurity becomes a challenge for many organizations because of the fact that they're handling many tools within their organizations. They have the firewalls, VPN tools. They have a lot of kind of network filtering capabilities. So all of those tools become a little bit of a headache for the infrastructure team to manage. So what we did in COGNNA, we started actually from the same model that Dan was talking about, doing cloud-based kind of shift. We started from that. We provided a single shop for all companies to use that as a single stop for cybersecurity management. We monitor, we detect, we respond to threats through our platform. This platform works with a lot of the technical, a lot of kind of the complexity in different various organizations. Most of our clients are today, small to medium businesses and also enterprise customers who felt the enterprise grade solutions are very hard to keep up, and it's very hard to kind of use them at scale. So our solution designed to be very easy, adaptable, and we're also helping many of the fintech organizations today in Saudi. We have a few actually unicorns in that domain. So we've some of them actually our customers. So we're happy to help them with that journey and being part of the success as well in that domain.
I love it. So I got so many questions right now, but I want to make sure, Emad, you can tell us a little bit more about your company. So then we'll go back and forth. But Emad, give us your elevator pitch or your 2-minute pitch on what you're working on right now as well.
Of course. So we are Autobia, and we are trying to digitize and elevate the supply chain of the automotive and spare parts in general. The idea is a lot of the companies are drifting to the new technologies and the deep tech. However, no one is tackling the infrastructural issues like COGNNA today is tackling the cybersecurity infrastructural problem, and we are tackling the supply chain problem in this regards. And what we are trying to do is to make sure that businesses in Saudi in general, either they are spare part shop, automotive industry, businesses with fleet of cars or trucks, they have the ability to capitalize on a better supply chain and network to be able to make sure that the work will be continue without actually having this kind of impacts due to poor supply chain, or as you know, there is a lot of issues since COVID, and things are building up in terms of supply chain and moving parts around the world, especially with a lot of car manufacturers are being in the market, a lot of brands, different variation for the vehicles and trucks. And we want to make sure that everyone have this one-stop access in terms of the availability and the variety of the spare parts. However, being in that ecosystem is unique. No one is doing that in Saudi as of today. And we had to tackle different issues of the supply chain, like, for example, the financing of the small businesses and all of that. And suddenly we are becoming more generic as a platform, tackling the marketplace issue, supply chain issue, then the fintech issue as well, with the B2B financing and the B2B2C financing as well. No one is planning to crash their car or to have their car repairs, and people, they don't plan financially to be able to do that. Okay. And today we are a platform that is taking care of that supply chain and any adjacent markets like insurance, finance, and whatever will come in that regard in that specific domain.
Okay. Now, Dan, I know you heard both the pitches. If you have any questions or feedback, love to give your insights. So go ahead if you have them top of mind right now.
I was just wondering how you're thinking about different markets. You talked about the Saudi market. How much of your business is there? How much of it is international today?
So from the demand side is actually our focus in Saudi, then we will move to focus to GCC. However, we are expanding from the supply side because the local market is not enough to cover such supply, and we are working with regional and global suppliers as well to be able to have this unified supply chain where there are hundreds and thousands of suppliers in one network. And that's why, as of today, we are working with companies in Turkey, UAE, China, Korea, and the US as well to be able to grow that supply network. And we are trying to have fundamental solutions for the local market, is either the supply side or the fintech side. And the market is big enough to be able to capitalize on for a couple of years, then we will expand to the MENA region in general.
And cybersecurity is obviously a worldwide issue.
Of course, yeah. I mean, definitely we started from Saudi, but the goal and the vision is to grow globally. We started from Saudi because there are a lot of need to have localized solutions. We all heard about large attacks globally that disrupted the whole logistics systems and some other financial systems. So we definitely wanted to specialize in that. We became first in MENA. It's a very underserved market. MENA, we are the first in developing a solution for defense as a cloud-based solution. which is give us like a niche there. We know there are global players here and there, but we definitely have an edge on terms of like the way we develop the solution, the way we integrate with local kind of threat intelligence feeds, and kind of providing a lot of faster response through being local there as well. So we provide the consultancy part and the incident response and driving the strategy for the cybersecurity part. And the vision, like I said, is global. We operate now in UAE as well. We have some clients in other countries, so we're expanding. But we started there. The market is still hungry for such a platform, and we believe there is also a need for localization in different ways.
Okay. Emad, I got a quick question for you, and then this is back to all of you. And then Dan, if you want to pile on, help me with this one. A lot of companies that are being launched in Silicon Valley are thinking of going global. Emad, this is your second company. Did your first company go global? And then my bigger question is, how do you start thinking about going global? I mean, you know where the market is here, and when I say here is wherever you are in the world and where you live, that's your here. In Silicon Valley, we know where our here is, and Saudi, you know where your here is. What do you start to think about first, and then how do you make that leap? And again, Emad, I'll start with you, because was there a difference in your first company in relation to what you're doing now? And then we'll look back to you, Ziyad, and like how are you doing that?
Sometimes startups start thinking global, but it will depend on the kind of the product and the services they are providing to the ecosystem. If you have a niche product, usually you need to be able to go global to be able to attract more customers. However, sometimes you have actually great kind of products that can, you barely cover the demand from one country, like we did in the TAM development. We are IPO now, we're almost hitting the $300 million valuation, and yet the market is way bigger than us, and we can consume more and more businesses within the local market. However, I understand that the challenges of some of the startup, like the SaaS companies, where they need to have some global presence to be able to attract this kind of number of customers, especially if they have a niche product specifically for a specific problem. Or like Adobe, for example, for Ghost is global. There is no kind of competitor in that domain, and every single one want to have this kind of software to be able to work with. And that is not the case with other startups.
Okay. Ziyad, your perspective on that?
Of course, yeah. I mean, going the global, I think for a problem that's solvable across the world, it makes sense because you could replicate the model in one country that you succeeded on and you go global, which actually what we're thinking now, since we closed the seed round last year with a couple of VCs, local VCs who had experience in B2B and SaaS platforms. So we were also drafting the kind of working the strategy that goes to the kind of a global starting from next year while we work on the Series A, raising the Series A. But the focus is we're going to go more kind of into the ecosystem perspective where we integrate with existing vendors around the world. So instead of competing with kind of vendors X or Y, we basically integrate with that, provide a common platform. Because I think in the security world, it's more of like it's a team sports. It's more of like, you try to find the collaboration and the kind of the integration with other tools where you can gain insight for that organization instead of just replacing security products every year. The idea here is to build an ecosystem where you can see and observe all the threats and mitigate vulnerabilities from one platform that integrates with everything. That's kind of the model. And we have also a focus on the forensics, which give us like a niche domain where we can investigate deeper than other players in the market. There is also some kind of IP work that we're working on as well, which will give us like an edge against competitive vendors in the market.
Now, Dan, same question to you with the companies that you're working with within your fund. Even from a corporate perspective, how is a startup, ready to go global? Or even from a corporate perspective, how do you pivot a marketing and branding concept from one country to another?
Yeah, so the companies that we, NextLeap Ventures, invest in Israel, many of them do start with the Israeli market, not all of them. But the bigger market's going to be the EU, it's going to be North America, et cetera. And I think what that gives you is it's sort of a test market to learn before you go global. We did something similar at Adobe. We would often have a new product, we would launch it in Australia and New Zealand because they speak English, kind of. They speak somewhat similar to our English, but they're sort of remote, so you could sort of experiment before and see how it goes, tweak it before you go global. So I think probably, if you're starting in Saudi Arabia, if you're starting in Israel, there's something to be, hey, let's make sure we've got this right before we go global. But to go global, then they've got to get the distribution partners. These companies don't have a lot of resources, and even a distributor, you don't turn it over to them and they sell it. They need a lot of hand-holding and support. So you need to apply a lot of go-to-market resources, but you probably also need a partner that's going to help you to reach all the various customers.
So you really need that initial sandbox to test all these things. But when you say go-to-market resources, what are some of those high-level resources that are key?
I mean, from a sales and marketing perspective, it's who's going to handle day-to-day issues, manage the relationship with your go-to-market partners or distributors, who's the product technical support, who's going to come in and help people with questions or issues that they may have. If it's a SaaS product, customer success is super important to make sure that they get it implemented and that they're doing well, so when it comes up for renewal, it's an easy sell instead of a hard sell.
This is a perfect segue to ask you, Ziyad and Emad, tell our audience a little bit about what the CODE program is, and how has this accelerating experience helped you, and what has been some of the most important, I guess, tools that has helped you in this experience?
Yeah, of course. I think the Ministry of Information and Technology and Communication, they focused on trying to scale up the technology scene in Saudi and trying to have that knowledge and insights from the best schools in the world. And nothing, I would say, probably competes the Silicon Valley school here in like how you think about the product iteration and customer interviews and how you pivot and what type of product versus platform kind of discussions and how you can make the platform in a kind of a blitz scaling concept. So that was the vision, and that was kind of the focus. I'm sure Emad probably have a different perspective on this, but I think the program was kind of a niche in the way that it was designed to help us meet people who were even advisors or professors in that domain, or some of them authors for those books and those concepts, and basically have kind of a one-to-one discussion and kind of discuss those kind of topics in more kind of very narrated kind of focused view on how we navigate the challenges that we face in our startups to grow globally.
Now, you said you lived here for a little while, right?
Yep.
Now, so I want to pivot this, I guess, to Emad. Is this your first time? Not your first time, but you haven't lived in the States, have you?
No, I came actually last time 10 years ago, so it's really great to see the difference between...
What, from a cultural perspective, is the biggest difference doing business in Saudi versus Silicon Valley? Because I know every country has a different perspective on differences, and I'd be amiss if I didn't tap into that. What are some of the differences that you've noticed?
The ecosystem in Saudi is a bit young, even in terms of VCs and investment and all of that, startup ecosystem in general. And this is one of the main goals, is to bring founders to Silicon Valley to understand and learn, having this kind of bridge between the two sides. Here I was telling Ziyad that we can close safe notes and investment offer a dinner, but what in Saudi will take a long time to be able to have this kind of success.
So speed.
Yeah, so the speed, the understanding, helping you out to clear out the narrative and all of that, because here the ecosystem is really developed and been through a lot of changes and pivoting in itself. Usually you will see other founders investing and being in the VCs. However, in Saudi, it's still the exit game and being able to have this kind of different generation of a startup is not yet there. We have few exit yet at the beginning. A lot of the startups in the late stage not yet exited in IPO market or acquisition or whatever the exit mechanism. And to be able to have this kind of proper ecosystem that is close all the angle of the startup ecosystem, you need to have that kind of ongoing successful companies and founders be able to boost that to the next level. And that's why Code, for example, decided to do such a program to accelerate that process. They have something in Silicon Valley here. The next time they will be in London, maybe in Australia later on. And the whole idea is to have this kind of bridges to be able to accelerate even the startup ecosystem in general on the co-founder level and the ecosystem level as well.
What's one thing, and then I'll pivot to you, Ziyad. What's one thing you're going to take home and really implement?
Most likely will be, it's on a personal level to delegate even more. Being away for 2 months has actually helped me out to understand how I can manage the business differently. Meeting with other co-founders here in Silicon Valley helped me out to realize the value of time and how we can manage our time well to be able to grow.
How can people connect with you?
In LinkedIn. They can search my last name, Daghreri, Daghreri.
Okay, and I'll have that in the show notes. And Ziyad, what's one thing you're going to take, other than the experience on Silicon Valley Impact, what other things that you've learned here that you're going to take home and try to implement?
I think empathizing with the customer, understanding their pain point, and looking into their side of the problem, and not to focus on the solution itself. That was the kind of key learning that I had, and I believe there is a lot of room for us to innovate in that and think about ways to solicit this feedback and get this feedback from the customers in so many different ways.
Right, and how can people connect with you?
I'm on LinkedIn. My name is Ziyad Alshehri, Ziyad, and the COGNNA is COGNNA. So it's easy to find me there.
Nice. Dan, one parting thought for our audience with all your experience. What's the one thing about strategy that people should be thinking about?
I think they should, a lot of people think about what they should be doing, but you should also think about what you shouldn't be doing, because your time and resources are limited, and a lot of strategies about what you're not going to do. And it could be your focus of what customer segments are we going after, what products, or it could be your time.
Yeah, think about it from multiple perspectives. And I love that you gave us multiple perspectives on strategy. I want to thank you for being here. How can people connect with you?
I'm on LinkedIn as well. So Dan Cohen, search on NextLeap Ventures or Adobe, and I'll come up.
All right. Well, Dan, Ziyad, Emad, I want to thank you all for being here today. Great show, great insights. Good luck to you all. And we'll be talking soon. Brian, great job. See you soon.
Thank you, Brian. You also did a great job. Fascinating conversation. Thank you all. I appreciate you being here.
All right. And that's a wrap. I want to thank you all for listening to Silicon Valley Impact. See you all next week.